Hello, everyone. Today, I'm excited to introduce another standout leader who is looking for their next opportunity in the CPG space. Mickie French is a global marketing executive with a remarkable career spanning CPG, B2B, agency, and nonprofit sectors. Mickie is multilingual and has lived and worked in 10 countries, led teams of up to 300, and driven growth for some of the world's most iconic brands like Mars, Coca-Cola, P&G, and PepsiCo. She's known for transforming complex global marketing organizations, building high-performing teams, and aligning strategies across cultures and functions. From leading brand turnarounds to shaping sustainability initiatives, her impact has been both deep and wide. If you're a company looking for a strategic marketing leader with a global mindset and a track record of delivering real results, Mickie is someone you'll want to know. So listen in as we talk with Mickie French. Welcome, Mickie.
Thank you, Samantha. Nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to have you here. So let's get started. So, Mickie, you've lived and led teams in over 10 countries. How has that global perspective shaped your approach to brand strategy and leadership?
I think what it's done is it's really made me understand how relevant cultures are across different countries. A lot of brands will get their ideas from headquarters and push them out into different regions, and it might not be as relevant in those regions. And also, good ideas come from anywhere. So some of the best brand ideas were coming from markets that brands considered emerging markets. And so as a leader, it really reminded me to stay curious, to look for cross cultural relevance, and to really lead an inclusive team and not just look at the big markets to make sure my team was built that way.
Yeah, so in doing that, did you rely, it sounds like you relied a lot on the boots on the ground, right? The people who are actually living and breathing in the country to inform some of your decisions?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really about them as consumers, also, right? At the end of the day, we're all consumers. So, as well as really understanding the culture, in a lot of instances, it had to do with food. So, the culture of food, what a family gathering was like. And I was lucky enough to be invited into their homes and watch how they cook and see what was in their pantry and their refrigerator, if they even had one. So, really
Cool.
awesome experiences.
So did you become multilingual just by being in the countries, or did you study, or did you study? Was it a little bit of both?
My undergraduate degree is in French. I spent a year in France, in Aix-en-Provence, and so that kind of solidified my love for French. I had a minor in Spanish. And so I spoke those two languages and I learned how to learn languages that way. But then the rest of it was just learning it in country. Even if we were doing business in English, I still had to go to the grocery store. I still had to tell a taxi driver to turn left, turn right. I still had to negotiate in markets for, the best price of an apple. So it was
Yeah.
every day. So I would not say I have full fluency in all of the languages in all the places I lived, but I definitely have. I have street fluency, and I understand a lot, especially about the categories I was working on.
Yeah, I'm sure knowing the language helped you get better immersed in the culture, right?
100%.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, yeah.
best way to not spend 3 years being a tourist, right? To really get in and learn about what's happening in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Thanks for that. So you've worked with powerhouse brands like, as I mentioned in the intro, Mars, Coke, Pepsi, P&G. What's one campaign or initiative that you've been especially proud of and why?
I've been lucky to work with really responsible brands who did great things for the communities that they were in. I'd say my favorite was Global Pedigree campaign, Pedigree dog food. I was in charge of all emerging markets from a strategy and an execution standpoint. We developed a campaign called We're for Dogs, or Dogs Rule. And at the
Mhm.
time, globally, pet food was seen as the thing that just keeps your dog alive or keeps your dog from having bad joints, right? And it was the advertising at the time was really about the food, it was animated dog jumping and better bone structure, etc. And one of the consumer insights, I was just talking about this to somebody this morning, that we came up with was people don't buy a dog to feed it pedigree. People don't buy a dog because, ooh, I want to feed it this brand. So
Yeah.
our all of our insights were around the relationship between dogs and people, and the reason that people get dogs for companionship, for companionship for their kids. And so we've really changed the whole narrative of the entire global pet food category from sort of a therapeutic dog food as therapy to really a brand that loved dogs as much as they did. So what we said is, if what 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 we said is if we convince our consumers that we love dogs as much as they do, they'll let
Yeah.
us feed their dog,
So
right?
you kind of switched the approach from like more of a functional
Absolutely.
brand to to you're tapping into the emotions of the consumer.
Yeah. And I mean,
And it's so in
right.
yeah, go
This
ahead.
was some time ago because now the whole market is that way.
I was just going to say that, like with Farmer's Dog and so many of the other brands, they're tapping into that feeling that dog's a part of the family, right? Now it's prevalent. Before it was not. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so that's
cool.
the
I like that.
most fun to work on, and I'm most proud of to have been, part of the planning team on that.
Yeah, yeah, cool. All right. So from corporate giants to nonprofits, your career spans a really wide range of organizations. What draws you to a new opportunity, and how do you assess fit there?
I think because I grew up on super responsible brands, always feminine care in from P&G, allowing girls to go to school in emerging markets month round, right? To working with Pedigree and a lot of the dog adoption work that we did. Impact has always been really important to me in the roles that I had. The reason I joined the Center for Food Integrity was really their vision and their mission to build a trusted food system. And so my next role and what I'm assessing, even on some of the project work I'm doing, is how can I have the biggest impact? In fact, I have a post-it note sitting right in front of me that says, where can Mickie have the greatest impact? I did
Hmm.
not write that for this. And that's really what guides me at this stage in my career, particularly.
And so it sounds like mission driven is going to be something, and I know better for you is nice, but wrapped up in that is mission driven, which is my sweet spot too.
Right,
How do you assess if a company is mission driven or not? Right? Because everyone says they're mission driven, right? But only some companies actually live it and breathe it.
right, right. I think that comes through the interview process because candidates should be interviewing companies as much as companies are interviewing candidates and really say, so I've studied your mission. Here's how it's stated. Show me now that I'm inside your four walls or on a Zoom call with you, how that comes to life. Right. And so I think that's an opportunity just to have a deeper conversation about the company as well. So that's how I
Yeah.
assess it and really give me some examples, show me some examples. And some are kind of, oh, well, look at our report. No, I actually want to hear the stories, right?
Yeah,
How,
and I think LinkedIn has really helped with that. Companies are really getting it out on LinkedIn. And for me, it's even more impactful when I hear people who work for the
right,
company
right,
post on LinkedIn about some of the mission driven activities that the company's doing. Then you know that the culture is from the top down,
right,
mission driven, right?
right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
what are the
Cool.
actions, not just the words, right?
Right, right. They're living and breathing it. Exactly. All right, cool. Thank you for that. So you've successfully built and restructured teams around the world, like, as we talked about, right? How do you gain trust quickly? I know that speaking the language is probably an important component, but outside of that, how do you build trust and inspire alignment in new environments?
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, just showing an interest in their culture, showing an interest in their language. And then really it's getting in and rolling up your sleeves, right? Not coming in as the ugly American if you're going into another market to say, this is how we do things. Because often that was really my job was to align with strategic planning processes or to help launch a new product for a company. And it's really making sure everybody understands what the common goal is and working together through it and having them see me working alongside of them, but also transparent communications. Really, this is what our expectations are. And then starting to get some quick wins on the board, some quick results. And also,
Yeah.
I think for those teams in markets, letting them know that I can be their voice to back to the sort of global center, right? So it wasn't me just bringing information out to the markets. It was making sure that the market information got into the central planning process so that
Yeah.
their voice was heard. So that was really a big part of it.
And they could see that happening, right? And they see some of the things that they've said come to life or be acted upon, and that's impactful, I would imagine, to the people in your on your team. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think rolling up your sleeves really builds trust,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So you've been described as a change agent and cross-functional connector. Can you share a time when you had to drive change in a resistant or complex environment and/or complex environment?
Yeah. So this is a timely, I think, example. So I was sent to Russia. I had done work in Russia, about a decade before, but I was sent to Russia to help take over an operation that we had purchased, but that really hadn't been integrated into the network. And they really liked getting the new business that was coming from a global organization, but they didn't really want to change, right? They didn't really
Mhm.
want to do anything different. So I'll try to keep this concise. They literally sat me under a leaky skylight with a desktop computer that had a crappy monitor and said, here's where you are. We think you're a spy from America and you just want to know what we're doing here. And off they went. And I did exactly what you asked about in the previous question, which was I showed them how, if we could tweak the way we present ourselves, if we use some of the global strategic planning tools, that it could help them grow their business in Russia. Had nothing to do with the global organization, but help them grow their business. And then also make sure that they understood that we were as in love with the Russian culture as they were, right? That culturally there could be an alignment there. So I went from sitting under a leaky skylight to sitting in what they called the boss office. It was the office with the founders, and we really, I mean, I'm still in touch with them today. They became very good friends, and also we really built a successful business that worked well for the large agency group, but also for the office and for the individuals in Russia.
That's incredible. So you actually started by showing what's in it for them to really get them engaged with
Right,
you. And once you
right,
did that to show your value, that's when they came on board.
right. And
Yeah.
I made it personal, right? I made sure everybody got English lessons because they all wanted to speak English, right?
Yeah.
Made sure everybody in the office had English lessons. I made sure I was culturally sensitive to things like they would never leave the office before I left the office. And I didn't
Mm.
realize that at the beginning, right? So I was staying till 9, 10 o'clock at night
Oh no.
and didn't realize. I thought, boy, they work late here. After a couple of months, I was like, let's see what happens if I leave at 5, right? And then
Yeah.
they would leave at 5 or 6. So just really understanding what they expected from a leader as well was super important.
And how do you go about learning the culture of the country, right? Obviously, being in it, you learn it. But how would you, if you were to do it again, how would you have learned ahead of time that people in the Russian offices won't leave until their boss leaves? Like, are there ways to educate yourself on, and have you done that? Have you used those ways before?
I think it's harder to do it ahead of time. I try to learn some
Mm-hmm.
of the language ahead of time. I
Mm-hmm.
try to learn, a bit about sort of the meal times and that kind of stuff. But sometimes it was last minute. I mean, I remember being on my way to Budapest and I was going, well, what's the name of their money here? I didn't know anything when I got there. I didn't know a word of anything because it was a quick last minute move. So the best way is just to be there and to not spend all of your time with other Americans or tourists, to really find, whether it's in the office place or outside of the office,
Mm-hmm.
find some local friends, so that you can learn the culture and not just be this bubble of expats or foreigners in a country, which I think a lot of people tend to do. And go out and see their shows, even if you don't speak the language. Listen to their music and go to their restaurants, the local restaurants. Like don't eat at all of the American chains. Unless it's from their clients and then eat there every day. But right,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So and then
So it
it's
builds credibility, right? Like it builds your credibility with them. I love
it's
that. And
harder,
that would be true here too, I would imagine, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's harder to do before you get there because you're operating on a little bit of nothing. I mean, I guess in hindsight, I would have learned more Russian literature. I would have learned more about, Mexican music, like some of those cultural things. But again,
Hmm.
I probably would have learned it from a book, and it's very different when you're like at somebody's house and dancing on their patio.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds fun. Sounds like a fun career that you've had so far.
Yes. Yeah.
And you've led teams of up to 300 people, right? So as your career's evolved, how has your leadership style evolved from, managing small local teams to larger global organizations?
I mean, it's gone both ways as well, right? So I've gone back to smaller teams as well, but I think it's really about staying true to my own values in um, you know, working hard. I grew up working in the fields and farms in Nebraska and ended up having this amazing global career, right? Who does that? But just remembering where I came from and remembering sort of what how important it is to treat people well. I think I also as I grew from smaller groups to larger groups, I got better at delegating and not being the one to do everything. I think that's some senior management and founder syndrome is that I can do it. It's easier for me to do it myself or quicker for me to do it myself than to teach people. So it's sort of moving from being the person who does it all, including ordering the toilet paper if you're in charge of an office,
Yeah.
to really more mentoring and less doing it for people. And I think I've been gotten better at making the difficult decisions that nobody else wants to make because that's what leadership sometimes is. Letting people
Yes.
go, restructuring offices, but doing it in a way that's empathetic and still true to my values.
Yeah, yeah. And when you've promoted people, so one of the things that I've seen is when someone's good in a function, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a good leader.
Right.
Right? And how do you go about assessing? I'm working on a role right now where everyone has the functional expertise that the role requires. It's in this role, finding the person who could be the leader and the influencer, which is what this company needs for the role. How do you go about assessing someone in a position to see if they're going to be promoted, if they're going to be a good leader?
If it's well, regardless of where they come from, I often for references start with the people who reported to them, right? And ask the people who they led, did this person inspire you? Was this person creative? Do you like working with this person? I mean, it's not all just about personality, but it really comes down to if you build that trust, like we have been talking about throughout, it's people will work harder if you've built that trust not only between you and an individual but within the team and each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Asking people who worked for them, did they inspire you to do your best work, right? Did
Right.
they allow you also to do your best work? Because leadership is about delegating and about putting the right people in the right place and then letting them do their work, right? And they'll make mistakes. We all do. I have, young adult children. That's exactly it's happening at home too. Let them do the work and let them fail as long as it's not a huge fail, but give them the space to grow and to fail. So that's what I'm looking for. If I'm looking for a leader, either to replace me, because often what I was in markets to do was to build up a local team and leave, right?
Yeah.
So who were people going to for advice, even if it didn't have to do with that specific account or that specific, brand question? Who are they going to for general advice? And that person is generally the one I would choose, even if that meant they jumped a level from a title standpoint.
Amazing, super smart. Yeah, I think finding people that build trust instead of trying to bully their way into getting people to do stuff is always the right way to go. And I love that you had the approach of being around, right? And seeing who the stars, the leader stars in the office were.
Because
Cool.
the people they report to don't always know, really, right? Because they're
Yeah.
sometimes people can be really great at managing up, but then really not great at managing down.
Oh, I would say more people are better than managing up than down for sure. Yeah. I think there's a drastic shortage of good leaders in this country for sure. And hopefully we can all change that as we
Right,
move forward.
right,
All right. So tell us like a little bit more in detail about what kind of opportunity that you're looking for next. So yeah, I know you said you wanted a mission-driven company, you wanted the opportunity to affect change, but is there anything more specific you want to say? Like, how do you want to use your voice and leadership in your next chapter?
right. Great question. Yes, I mean, certainly mission driven, values aligned. But I also think that right now, what's really important is for me to work for a company that really values the global marketplace, especially given what's happening in our world right now.
Mhm.
Um, and I think what I've proven is that whether it's a small 3-person office that just needs some mentoring, or it's a global team that's spread across from South Africa to India to Japan to wherever, that they're valuing really what a truly global company can do and what kind of impact they can have, not just for their shareholders, their stockholders, but for the people that work for them and the people and the markets that they work in, because often some of this is really life changing and country changing and culture changing if brands get it right, not just
Yeah.
being there to take a profit. So, anybody who is looking for help figuring out where their global team is, because often what I hear is, we have no idea what's happening out in South Africa, but we don't have time to send somebody there or money to send somebody there all the time. I'm looking for somebody who just needs some help evaluating where their marketing team is, or their communications team is, or their agency is, and then helping put together a plan and executing that plan on how do we help our clients better to manage, or how do we become more efficient, effective, and have a greater impact in the markets that we're working in.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say for you, Mickey, that you're really looking for an opportunity that's going to offer you that global
Yeah,
scale, right?
right.
Although most of the companies that I work with are smaller companies in the US, I'm hoping that, through LinkedIn, you're going to get the exposure to these other companies that will give you just get your name out there, right? Because I think your experience in the global um, in the in the global space is so important and hard to find. And so I hope that a global company sees this and is able to tap into your expertise there.
Thank you. No, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. I've made this strategic decision to spend part of my year in Chicago and part of my year in Paris. So because my language skills are and my network is strong there. So I've got sort of a foot at least on 2 different continents, and that helps with working on projects in different countries.
Yeah, no, I love it. Two of my favorite cities. Two of my favorite cities. Okay, so last question. So this is the good one. So what's something people wouldn't know about you by looking at your resume, like a core value, a personal passion, or hidden strength?
So I touched on it a bit in an earlier question. So I grew up in a small town in Nebraska. Well, it was a big town for Nebraska, 20,000 people. My first job was detasseling corn. I mean, some of the hardest, hottest, yuckiest, bug-filled work possible. But that's what we did as kids, and we learned the value of a hard day's work. We learned that work can actually be fun and enjoyable, and we took care of each other, right? It's that Midwestern work ethic where if so and so's field was flooded and we couldn't get in there that week, then people would come in and help, the following week. So it's really about taking care of each other. And so people say, you've got this global career. Are you originally from Chicago or somewhere in Europe? And I say, no, originally from the middle of Nebraska. And in Nebraska, we try to leave each place a little bit better than we found it. And so that's what I hope my global career has been. and will continue to be, right? Is finding those little places that need a little bit of a fix. And here I am.
Yeah, so where you grew up really informed, which I guess is normal, informed who you are as a person and what your values are and what your principles are. And so that you're bringing that into your work and what you're looking for in your next opportunity, which is really smart.
And then
Well,
in addition, I had that insane curiosity to see what else was happening in the world. Because there are a lot of those great people still in Nebraska. I just was one of them who
yeah.
was like, I want to see Paris. And here I am.
And how did you get that kind of desire?
My grandparents traveled a lot internationally. My
Mm,
mom, later, after I had already decided what my path was, owned a travel agency. And so I
mm.
think in our blood, I remember the postcards that my grandparents would send, even if it was from, Mexico or Canada, not that far afield, but I still have them in a box. It was
Wow.
part of that, oh wow, there's something else out there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. All right. Well, thank you, Mickey, for being here. I really appreciate it. It was a really great conversation.
Thanks so much, Samantha. See you soon.
Thanks. Yep, absolutely. See ya.
Bye.